I was born 2,437 years ago. In that time, I've had 3 wives. The last was Shikiko, a Japanese princess. Her father, Masamune, a genius, made this for me in 593 BC. It is the only one of its kind, like his daughter. When Shikiko died, I was shattered. I would save you that pain. Please, let Heather go.
Welcome to Highlander Rewatched, the podcast where each and every week we look at another part of the Highlander universe and talk about it in detail. Welcome to part 4 of our insanely exhaustive series on the Highlander motion picture. This is one of your rewatchers, Keith.
I'm another one of your rewatchers, Kyle.
This is Eamon, and Keith, I think we should call it comprehensive.
Yes, not exhaustive, comprehensive.
How about punishingly intricate?
Yeah. This is the beginning of our second recording session about the Highlander movie. We did not think we would be doing a second recording session about the movie. We actually were all surprised, I think, of how much stuff we wanted to talk about, and there's a surprising lot to talk about in Highlander. I
think there's more going on in this movie than I had given it credit for before seeing it again through a more critical lens.
Totally. So if you've just found our podcast and you haven't listened to the other parts of it, go back and listen to parts 1, 2, and 3. You can find them on SoundCloud. You can also find them on iTunes, and you can always subscribe right on iTunes. They're also on Stitcher or any major podcasting app. So if you're interested, check out the previous episodes.
Plus, if you like the show, which is many people's window into the series, we've already done an episode for each individual episode of the first season of the Highlander TV show. So if you'd like to take that ride with us, you can go all the way back to the beginning, where you can see The Gathering, which has Christopher Lambert in it.
Totally. So let's hop back in.
Well, now we're back in the 20th century.
Back at the police station, there are a couple crazy lines. Brenda walks into Frank Moron's office, Alan North, and we get treated to this bit of dialogue.
A hell of a lot I can do about it, pal. You see what I'm up against? His Vietnamese neighbor ate his dog.
Jeez Louise.
You see what I'm up against.
Do you see what we're up against with this movie?
So she's got this scheme. She's taking him out to lunch so that she can look at the file on the Madison Square Garden beheading.
Right, which I was watching the scene a couple times. Like, it's on his desk already. Like, she comes in and peers at it. And I think that's when she kind of gets the idea, like, oh, let me get him out of here. Here's the file. So she comes up with this, like, lunch scheme.
She then discovers by looking at this, and, like, he stops her for some reason. Like, she's working on this case. Like, she's a CSI assigned to this case, but for some reason he won't let her.
Yeah, he closes the file and he's like, this is confidential. It's like, what? Like,
it's like, why? Why from her? She's actively engaged in this case.
Yeah.
But in any case, she opens it and discovers that the person that she's seen in this bar is Russell Nash, the suspect in this beheading.
Right. So, after this, we cut to Connor's, like, apartment / antique store.
And he's sharpening his katana.
Right. And he has next to him a book called A Metallurgical History of Ancient Sword Making, which is an insane title of a book.
Well, you write that so it flies off the shelf.
Right.
Yeah.
And he flips the book over, and it's written by Brenda.
Hey.
Brenda, who grew up in Scranton, Pennsylvania, where the office was supposedly supposed to take place.
Yeah.
And her father was in the Air Force, apparently.
Yeah.
According to the book jacket.
The book jacket.
Why would you include
wow.
that? It's like, hey, this is the author of this book. Let me tell you about her dad. And the picture doesn't look like her. It looks like another person.
It clearly... I don't know if it's her or not, or it's clearly a picture that was taken, like, many moons ago. Like,
I don't know.
Like,
it's not
different
like,
haircut, different, like, all sorts of stuff.
Like, it didn't jump. She didn't jump off. The picture didn't like, oh, yeah, that's the same person.
Right.
Like, it could be, but...
How many authors are also working for the New York City Police Department?
I have a lot of problems with her. Yeah, I don't know why she works for the police department. She has such a specific knowledge base.
Yeah.
That it is insane that she is in the forensics lab, I think.
Yeah, I don't know.
So then there's another flashback. So we go over Connor's shoulder, and there's like a dirty fish tank. And
Yep.
He needs to change the water in that.
Yeah.
yeah, like it's very
No filter?
No filter.
Poor fish.
Hashtag no filter.
So he
He's in a boat.
we flashback, and it's a cool dissolve, I think, through the water.
This is one of the best ones.
This is
one of the best ones.
This is another one that's really great. So we get treated to another musical tidbit here.
Yeah.
From Sean Connery.
Yeah.
B-A-L-A-N-C
That's the balance song.
Yeah, the balance
Everyone's
song.
favorite balance song.
This was very funny. I thought that was really funny. Yeah.
Love this little tidbit,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's so weird.
Yeah.
I like it up to a certain point.
Yeah, there's a lot.
So Connor is like balancing 2 jugs of water or something,
Yeah.
or like weights. I don't know what they are.
He's doing some balance exercise on
Yeah.
this boat. This feels very Karate Kid-esque,
Yeah.
being on
Yeah.
the tip of a boat or canoe or whatever.
Yep.
I actually like this scene a lot, and the series I think does this better, but this scene kind of shows Connor as being a little more immature.
Yeah.
Like he's brash. He's he doesn't understand what he's doing.
Yeah.
He's I don't know what the point of this is.
Yeah.
He's kind of petulant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, Duncan in the series, I think they just have more room to explore that more. What was Duncan? What Duncan used to be like, and in this case, he's a little different.
So I had some questions on this. Oh, I enjoy the explanation of what a haggis is,
Yeah.
and that whole thing is pretty funny.
That's revolting.
But this...
And this is where he calls him a Spanish peacock.
He says,
Yeah.
"You Spanish peacock," and he says, "I am not Spanish. I told you, I'm Egyptian."
So let's just address that just real quick, because this is Sean Connery,
Now there are layers
a
to this.
Scotsman playing a Spaniard.
And or an Egyptian.
An Egyptian?
Either way,
Yeah.
there's some... He should just not be playing...
This is so crazy,
Yeah.
the levels of his ethnicity
Yeah.
or whatever.
I mean,
Or nationality, I should say.
juxtaposed against fucking Christophe Lambert playing a Scotsman.
It's funny that the Scotsman is not the Scotsman.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, you're correcting this guy kind of angrily, hey, I told you I'm Egyptian. But he's got the most Spanish-sounding name ever.
Yep.
Why does he use that name? Nothing about his name sounds Spanish, and he's in service of the King of Spain. What is going on here?
Again, is this the peacock sort of thing? He's got this grandiose name,
Which
but
is
it would have
fine.
also been interesting if it was a hyphenated name. It's
Yeah.
and if it was a mixture of an oddly Egyptian name and a Spanish name and a Iranian. They could have gone through, and it's he just kind of named he just kept naming himself.
Yeah, but then it's he clearly goes by Ramirez.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Kurgan knows him as Ramirez. This is not his Russell Nash
Right.
equivalent. He goes by Ramirez, which sounds not Egyptian at all. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know why he couldn't have just been Spanish. He could have just been Spanish, and that would have been fine.
Right.
Or
Yeah.
if they wanted to make him Egyptian, why isn't his name or character or anything about him remotely Egyptian? Also, the idea that he's supposed to be very ancient, him being Egyptian is cool and makes a lot of sense.
Right.
Yeah.
When we
I
think
think
of,
that's why they-
one of
because-
our oldest civilizations.
Yeah.
I don't think that he was originally supposed to be Egyptian.
He wasn't.
Yeah,
No.
and so they
Yeah.
changed it. And I think it was really just to make him older.
Yeah.
It's let's make him as old as we can to be the wise old mentor, the Obi-Wan or Yoda, I guess, of this movie.
Yeah.
Yep.
So he starts Connor is worried because he can't swim.
Yeah.
So I guess Sean Connery, Ramirez, gets irritated. He's well, fucking take a bath, but
Yeah.
and he just tips him over.
Tips him over.
And he's I can't swim. He's don't worry, you can't die. You're immortal. And he really means that. Let's unpack what happens now.
Yeah.
So Mac sinks to the bottom of this lake. This is really goofy.
Yeah, it is. I felt like I was watching Sonic the Hedgehog
Yeah.
when this happened.
Bubbles coming up
Yeah.
from the bottom.
Whoop, whoop.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was exactly what it was. And the way Connor is kind of goofing with it, he's whoa, I can breathe.
Yeah, I can
Woo.
breathe. No, you can't.
So this is completely different from the series in the sense that like you would perhaps actually like you would die and then like be reborn. Like there's this element of constant rebirth in the series of Immortals. Like if you get shot, you die and then you come back. And we've debated on this podcast about like, well, I don't know what defines how long it takes to you to come back, like or how far long it takes to heal or whatever. But like this is just like you cannot die at all. And they bring, I think actually they're kind of consistent at least within the movie because this comes up later.
Well, people get the crap kicked out of them in this, and they bounce back like instantly.
Yeah. Yep. Which I think adds an interesting element of like they're like these immortals in this movie are more powerful than the TV show. Like they're
you get shot, you get back
up. Like you're kind of more superhuman. And so he has like gills. Like he is Kevin Costner in Waterworld.
The Mariner.
Yeah. Like he can just breathe under and speak underwater, which is crazy.
And walk around.
So this
and he like plays around.
Yeah,
with
the sword.
Yeah, he's like, what the hell, man?
And then when he re-emerges from the water, it's like a cartoon drawing. Like he has seaweed
swamp
like
Yes, he does.
on his body, and it's just like, oh god.
So this scene was apparently filmed in London in like on a sound studio, like in a tank. So they had weights strapped to Christoph so he could be underwater and not float away as one does.
As a living person underwater will do.
Yeah, a little float. So apparently when he first went under, he had a mental like brain freeze and like didn't know what to do and like almost drowned.
Jesus.
Like when they
That seems like a sane human response.
Yeah.
Like, that seems really stressful.
Yep.
but apparently the way this whole scene kind of played out was Russell McKay, he was above the tank and there was a diver down there like with scuba equipment that was like giving Christoph air through like a tube. So, like, they would give him air, he'd pull back so they could do some lines, and give him some more air. And so they were constantly swimming back and forth. And apparently, like, I guess Russell was writing on paper or cards or whatever, giving notes to the scuba diver. And then the scuba diver was swimming to Christoph to be like, oh, these are some performance notes. And then, like, they would do the scene. So I just love, like...
That sounds horrifying to shoot.
Like, this
this is
insane,
bonkers.
Like, this insane production of, like, you go underwater, I'll write you, like, secret notes that I'll pass to the scuba diver.
Do you like me? Check yes or no.
It's like, and then
Don't
also,
add a third box that says maybe.
breathing will be tenuous. Like, it's like...
Well, there are also other ways to film this fucking sequence than literally drowning your lead actor.
Like, I guess hats off to Christopher Lambert for making it through this.
And
Sure.
also, I think this was like not necessarily planned the way it was because on the commentary, Russell McKay mentions like they did this like on a weekend. They were like, yeah, I picked Christopher up and like we went to this thing and it's like, is this like organized at all? Yeah. Like you guys just show up at a thing. It's like, oh, we'll do the tank thing. Like this didn't sound as organized as maybe the rest of the shoot was. It's like, let's do some pickup shots with this being underwater.
Pickup shots.
Yeah.
Let's do some aquatic pickup shots.
So Connor comes out of the water like Swamp Thing and attempts to murder Ramirez.
Yep.
I don't think it's serious, but like
I was wondering that. I was like, oh, is he really?
Well, now
attempting
he's
to-
buying into. It's just been proven to him that he's truly immortal.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think he bought it until this moment. I think that's the.
Yeah.
And then there's a maybe slight bit of magic / trickery, and like Ramirez almost disappears. Like I think you're
Yeah, he
supposed
goes to swipe and then he's gone.
he's gone.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're just supposed to assume that like, oh, Ramirez is just that quick and Connor's that clumsy, or is there like you know,
I think it's the first.
yeah.
And then this next conversation sounds like it happens between two people on separate planets trying to talk to each other with like a 10-minute time delay. It's so weird.
Can I play the clip?
Go for it.
You cannot die, MacLeod. Accept it.
That laugh.
I hate you.
Meanwhile,
I hate you.
right after this, fish fall out of his kilt, and then they look down at the fish, then they look up at each other, and he goes, well, that is a great place to start. It's like, what? Why?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Like, what is happening here?
I also wanted to mention something. So after Ramirez knocks Connor in the water, we're treated to a wide shot of Ramirez, I guess, rowing back to shore and singing another song. But I just wanted to call attention to the song he's singing, which is, "We ask you, Heavenly Father." And I was like, oh, he is singing like a prayer. It seems very intentional to introduce like religious stuff. Like, why is he singing that song? He just sang. He could have done The balance. Yeah, he could have given us the reprise of the balance song.
Or do.
There's any number of things he could have kind of sung, but it's like, oh, like, let's have him sing a prayer. I kind of was wondering, it's like, oh, like, we ask you, Heavenly Father, like, what is he asking? Like, again, is Connor the Christ figure of this movie? Ramirez, being like his guide, is having trouble training Christ to be the Messiah in this instance. Like, aren't you Christ? Like, can't you balance? Don't you know the task ahead of you? And so he leaves the scene with a prayer to God.
Huh. Interesting.
Thank you.
Also, just to pause.
I am breaking this shit down.
Just to pause on the, because we're ragging on this a little bit, because like other cartoonishes, these shots are gorgeous. Yeah. Especially that pullback shot where this prayer is going on.
Oh, yeah.
They're like in this beautiful lock.
Yeah.
Like, this made me want to go to Scotland.
Absolutely.
Like, I said like 4 times, like, oh, we should go there. Like,
Yeah.
we should go to Scotland. I want to go to castles and drink beer and see all these places.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And also, I think we should talk about like their kind of camaraderie and
Sure.
like, the chemistry between Lambert and Ramirez. I feel is like true. Like,
Yeah, it is.
It comes across on
Yeah.
the film like I think Connor's best performances are, or Lambert's best performances are with Sean Connery. Like I think he brings something out of him.
Yeah.
They
Also,
became
when he talks the most.
It is
Yeah,
also true
yeah.
when he does
Yeah.
talk the most, and is also not being like sullen and like
Yeah.
grumpy. So it's nice to see like the lighter side of Connor.
Mr. Grumpy Gills.
Yeah,
It
literally
does,
Gills.
it does seem genuine. It reminds me of like Adrian Paul and Werner Stocker, where they kind of just seem to elicit more honest performances from these actors.
Totally. Yeah, I guess Christoph and Sean Connery became like fast friends on this set.
Yeah.
So much so that Christopher Lambert demanded that Ramirez, who, spoiler alert, dies in this movie, had to be in the Highlander 2, not in a flashback.
Just so they could
Oh,
be together.
Pal around some more.
Right. But also, like, it is kind of interesting. Like, I guess Sean Connery does take on a little bit of like real world teacher to Christopher Lambert. This is one of Christophe Lambert's first productions, like big ones, like,
Right.
And it's like Sean Connery actually acted as like a mentor to him as an actor, as a like in addition to being like his real mentor in the film itself, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, it is. Hey, Rewatchers, this is Eamon. Hey, if you
Hey,
like...
we're the Rewatchers.
Well, we're all the Rewatchers. We're all here. And
Me
we
too.
all want you to subscribe to our podcast. That way you don't have to download it every day. You can just get an update there. And it's really easy.
How easy is it?
It's as easy as subscribing to our podcast.
And no harder or easier than that specific reference.
Nope. And then why don't you give us a review, too? How about 5 stars? That sounds good.
That sounds easy too.
Just
Yeah.
a suggestion. Just push the 5 instead of the 1.
That's right. In fact, don't push the 1. Don't do it.
We would really prefer you not push the 1.
So right now we are back at Connor's residence. We're in kind of like a little shed or something. It's like a little
It's his side shed next to his castle.
right.
Right. Yeah.
I guess this is for like the horses and his equipment and stuff.
And his smithy.
His castle seems like he has like his dining room in there or something.
Yeah, there's like it's really only one floor, except it's like 8 stories tall. Like
Right.
there's only one room.
Yeah, the castle's weird. It's a dining room table and a staircase.
Right.
That leads to nothing. Like there's no room upstairs. It looks like
No.
It just goes up to like look out the window.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very puzzling what this house is.
That's
Is
okay.
this like somehow a metaphor for something? He literally lives in like a stairway to nowhere in like a crumbling castle ruin that is destroyed as part of his battle, the battle with the Kurgan. I don't know. It's such a puzzling structure that maybe there's something afoot. I don't know.
Maybe.
So in this scene, Ramirez is explaining what Connor's immortality is and what the gathering is, and we have a clip of this. So
Yeah.
you want to listen to this, and then we'll talk about it.
Let's do it.
All right.
We're brothers.
You must learn to conceal your special gift and harness your power
Harnish.
until the time of the gathering.
What gathering?
When only a few of us are left, we will feel an irresistible pull towards a faraway land to fight for the prize.
A faraway land.
I really like the gatherings in New York.
This takes place in like the ancient past, as it were, and that the faraway special place is just New York City.
It's the new world,
right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
How long has Connor been in New York, do you think? Is this part of the gathering that he just happens to find himself there?
He's well established.
Is he just
seemingly.
lucky? He's lucky that he picked New York. He didn't have to travel.
I guess so. I
Or
got the impression that he could have been there since the American Revolution, even.
Well, the house keeps on changing hands,
Right.
so he must have been there since the first changing of hands. If he's been using the same signature,
Right.
We're getting a little ahead of
Yeah.
the computer magic that susses that all out.
So there's one thing in the scene I thought that was really interesting. I brought up before that this movie might have some homosexual undertones. And there's a couple things Ramirez says here that I think you could interpret that way. He says, we were born different, and men will fear us because we're different. You have to hide yourself, like be closeted in some way. And I was like, oh, that could be read a little differently. So I thought that was neat. So in the next scene, we are treated to a training montage.
Yeah.
Which I'm a big proponent of. A little behind the scenes stuff. This training montage was originally, I want to say like 12 minutes long.
What?
Wow.
And they cut it down to 3, which is
That's amazing.
Still like not short.
No.
But it's 12 minutes. Is it still a montage?
Right.
Yeah.
That's a
it's
lot.
just they're actually showing all the training. It's not intercut at all. Does that exist somewhere?
I've never seen it. No.
We need a montage.
Yeah.
The crazy rock precipice that they fight on is insane. How
Yeah.
do they get up there?
I don't know how they got up
They
there.
probably had to be like lifted by a
Helicopter?
helicopter.
With a helicopter?
Like, it's awesome that they're on top of that rock. I feel like they both kind of look nervous up there. Like, whoever the stunt people are that are doing that.
Yeah.
But this is an awesome, I think, sequence. And the music that is played during this sequence is amazing. And
Totally. Yeah.
On YouTube, I found the song and just have been listening to it all week.
Yeah, the score to this movie is really it's a lot of sweeping music. It's beautiful. There's a couple interesting things that are said here by Ramirez to Connor that are just puzzling and don't really come back, I guess. They're not paid off later. So he says to Connor that you should never lose your temper. And I was like, oh, that's an interesting double meaning, because when you lose your temper, you could refer to that as losing your head. Don't lose your cool, don't lose your head about something.
Right.
And it's that's a neat thing, because that line is brought up a lot.
Yeah,
but it doesn't come back. It would be something if Connor had an anger problem, or if, more importantly, maybe the Kurgan does, and it's the Kurgan maybe fights too aggressively or something. Because Ramirez also brings up, he's don't overextend your thrust, you're
Right.
off balance, and it's again, really, where's the it's I wish that was a lesson learned, and that came back later. Again, if the Kurgan fights too emotionally and isn't cool, because they also set up this thing Connor seems to meditate a little, there's this connection with nature, and
I do think this pays off to an extent, right? Because we've discussed the thing that is the most badass about Connor, because he's doesn't seem that physically threatening or he's the master swordsman necessarily, is that he always seems completely cool, which is in contrast to the Kurgan. And the Kurgan makes a bunch of kind of crazy unforced errors in various fights that seem to be his undoing at the end. So I think that, there's at least a contrast. It's not a clear payoff.
it's not clear. I just wish I think it was clear. If we saw him make an error at the end that was specifically getting too angry or getting too frustrated, especially if it was in the dichotomy of maybe Connor just breathing and doing a kata move at the end or something, and then defeating the Kurgan. I think then you'd really see the difference in the two. One of those Karate Kid sort of moments.
Sure.
Yeah, where he relaxes and he
Gives him the crane kick.
yeah.
This sequence, I couldn't help but think that Christopher Nolan watched this montage and stole it for Batman Begins.
I agree.
Because they're so similar. Even how the score intertwines with the footage they're playing, and the sword fighting on the amazing locations.
Yeah, and Ramirez cuts the tree in half, and it
falls on him.
him, and that felt very when they're fighting on the
On the ice?
on the
Yeah.
ice. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
oh, this is the sure footing
It's
thing or whatever.
basically lifted. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I thought that was interesting. Or maybe it's an homage. I shouldn't say it's a swipe, but
But speaking to our conversation about the way the sword digs into the pillar, this sets up the rules even more clearly about what's possible in this.
Right.
Because Sean Connery literally cuts a foot diameter tree stump
Yeah.
in half with one swipe of a sword.
Yep.
It's nothing.
And the sword also falls off that cliff,
Yeah.
100 feet,
like
and it's fine.
Well, and like now Ramirez has to climb his ass down and like find the sword that like
no
was,
metal detector.
Yeah, which was thrown off a mountain. It's like, oh well, I guess we have to find it now. And they're like climbing down.
Yeah, stop bragging, Connor. This
Yeah.
is going to be a pain in the butt.
So we also get some more info here about Holy Ground. So
Right.
Ramirez mentions that no one will fight on Holy Ground. It's tradition.
Right.
So we've always had this question in the series, but they reinforce that here, that it is not a rule, it's a tradition.
Yeah, none of us will violate that law.
Yeah.
The Kurgan adheres to it,
Yeah, he does.
despite being an absolute monster who violates every other norm. For some reason, he takes this seriously.
I think the Kurgan does it like for fun. He's like, hey, I can, poke fun at Connor in this church and he won't do anything. He's like doing it as a joke or something. I don't know.
See, especially because they've set up that this is so much more magical than the show seems to indicate.
Yeah.
I just don't know why they just can't.
Well, Connor, we're getting ahead of ourselves, but Connor wants to fight him in the church.
Yeah.
And the Kurgan's like, oh, no, bro, not in the church.
He's like, hey,
Yeah. And then Connor's like, we'll meet outside. And I don't know what happens about that.
but they don't.
We'll talk about that later.
Yeah, so I don't quite understand why that is the tact on the whole thing.
There's also this amazing, like, running on the beach scene
Oh,
here.
it's like Rocky 3.
It's like Rocky
Yeah.
3.
and just playing into kind of the homoerotic
right.
Yeah.
spiel of this whole thing. Like
Yeah.
the running on the beach, not unlike Rocky 3, is a very homoerotic sequence.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't quite culminate in them like frolicking in the water like Rocky 3 does,
Right.
but it's well, no, actually it does.
Yeah.
They
That's
jump,
right, they jump into the water.
They jump off the cliff, and Sean Connery utters the puzzling line, "This is the quickening." Whee! It's like diving off a cliff is the quickening. What is the quickening?
Well, he's like communing with nature. Like there's a stag off to the side, and at first Sean Connery's like, "Oh, concentrate and feel the stag heartbeat or whatever."
Right.
And then he feels it, I guess, and they start running.
Yeah, like, does it give him... I couldn't tell. Does it, like, make him run faster or something?
I don't know.
thought so.
Like, that he has this now connection. Like, he's got, like, a spirit animal, essentially.
He's like
Yeah.
Animal Man from the DC Comics.
Animal Man.
Well, apparently this scene was really hard to
are great,
film
yeah.
because I guess this was shot during... I don't know if it was the spring or the winter, but I guess all the stags had lost their horns.
Oh.
So they had to glue horns onto a stag, which, of course, the stag did not want at all. So it was
Right.
constantly trying to get them off. And so this
Ugh.
is a combination of them filming this, like, put-together animal and some National Geographic footage.
Wow.
And then the stag just ran off, and they found it, like, the next day, like, I don't know, like 20 or 30 miles away without the horns anymore. So I thought that was pretty funny.
Frankenstag.
I guess this is as good a time as any to bring up this other kind of interesting thread that's in this movie, and I don't know if it doesn't pay off, but it's like I wish it was more prominent. So there's this theme that there can be only one, and I was wondering what that means. Like before, I mentioned like, oh, I don't know if this is kind of a biblical thing about deities, like there can only be one God. That's maybe one way to look at it, but. And again, we're getting a little ahead of ourselves with what we find out the prize to be, but perhaps it's kind of like a little switcheroo. Like, we don't know really what the prize is, but there's this idea of oneness, and it's like being one with nature is something that Connor's all about, and so maybe that line is kind of recontextualized in that sense. And
No,
it's like there can be only one, like that's like some sort of universal like force, or like the force or whatever, because Connor feels the beat of the thing. Like, he seems to have like a sixth sense about stuff.
Right.
Yeah, I think that what you're saying is accurate. I think that is what the idea is. This theme doesn't quite come. This power doesn't quite come back.
Well, I'm super curious
And
about
that's
like how
odd.
this script was initially written. Like, I'd love to talk to Gregory Wine, and hopefully we will, because I want to ask him about some of these things. Like, were these themes present at some point? Like, was it conscious? And then
Right.
just through like the drafts and stuff, like things just kind of get like obfuscated as you keep rewriting. But it seems like there could be something there to that. Like, if you rewrote this, you could make that like a bigger theme. Again, like Ramirez talking to Connor about not getting angry, and like there seems to be this like odd Zen quality to this thing, this oneness.
Yeah.
It is interesting. One other thing about this montage, obviously the point here, because he beats him in this race on the beach, then he knocks his sword away on the mountain. They show him like getting a one-up on Ramirez like 3 times in a row for some reason.
Right.
So like he beats him in like the foot race with his stag powers. Then he disarms him on the cliff, which was wildly inconvenient. Then they show yet another sword fight where Mac beats him again as though it's like news. It's a little odd. It's
Yeah, I
almost
don't know
like-
why they
Yeah.
come back to that third, like, because it seems like after the cliff, like, that's the end of the montage. Like, the
And it's like,
music kind of
"Hey, I
finishes,
won,"
and it's
yeah.
like, yay! And then it kind of, I don't know, has this other weird scene tacked on.
Yeah.
Which has, like, an oddly threatening element to it, because Connor gets Ramirez, and it's
Right.
like, there's a small moment you think, like, he could kill him. Well, I don't know if we think as the audience, but Ramirez seems to think, like, uh-oh.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, Sean Connery's definitely in that mode, and the whole thing has been about, there can be only one. We fight to the last.
Right.
Do you kill this guy? How seriously are you going to take winning this thing?
Right.
Now we're in some kind of market where Heather is buying a chicken.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think this is a pretty nice looking scene. Like the stuff in Connor's village initially, like good sets, great costumes, like also a lot of extras. All kind of killing it. So
There's like
a wrestling match.
Yeah, there's a boxing match
yeah.
or something, like bare knuckle boxing or something.
Two old guys just beating the crap out of each other. Those guys did not look young.
No.
So we get more kind of info about immortality from Ramirez. So Ramirez tells Connor that he can't have children. Of course, Connor's like, well, Heather won't be happy about that. I can tell
Right.
you that for nothing.
And then Heather's like interacting with some local, I don't know, orphans or whatever you want to call it. Street urchins.
Well, I think so. There's another interesting. I think you could read some meaning into this not having children thing. I think it's interesting the fact that by virtue of being immortal, they can't have children. But in some ways, I think having children is a way to become immortal. Like you live on through your children. Like your
Right.
bloodline continues. So anyway, I think it's really interesting that they can't have children because in a way, that's the way us normal people can live on with kids. Then the other thing I was thinking, if we want to read this as some gay subtext, is, again, 1985, when this was filmed, is a very different kind of culture, especially gay culture in America. And if you think of a man and a woman, they can have a child, but two men in a relationship actually can't have a child. Now it's different. Obviously, you can adopt, and there's surrogate parents and all this other. The world of that is very different now.
Right.
But in this context, it's like maybe he's kind of saying he's like, well, because of your orientation, you can't have children.
Well, that's an interesting thing because in, I think Wyden's original version, Connor has sired many children over the course of his long life, and for whatever reason,
Right.
that was changed. And I'm not sure whose decision that was.
Yeah.
But I do think it's cool because it also cements the isolation that they feel as immortals, because it does create a definitive separation between them and mortals. It means that they can never truly put down the roots they want to put down or really have a kind of normal, quote, family life.
And Sean Connery, he's basically Ramirez is telling Connor to, leave Heather.
This is another thing I thought you could read into.
Yeah.
It's like, you shouldn't be with your beard. You should come with me.
Yeah, well, that's
And-
interesting.
Eh.
But Connor's not down for that, and he gives a giant hug gesture to Heather with the chicken. And she's like, he's so full of life. Talking about the chicken. It's like, let's eat him for dinner.
He grabs her butt hard, too, in this scene, too. Gets all up in it.
Oh,
Connor's
I didn't
a butt
notice
man.
that. Butt man. And then Ramirez tells Connor about his sword a little bit.
Yeah.
And about one of his wives, Shikiku.
Which, this whole thing is very historically problematic, and I don't understand much of it or why any of it's going on.
Yeah. I mean, how did Ramirez get this sword? Is that one of the inaccuracies?
Yeah, in 593 BCE, he gets this sword in Japan. So he's born in Egypt, but then he somehow, in 593, makes his way to Japan? Like, how does he pull this off? Like, he basically goes halfway around the world in an era where there's not that kind of intercommunication or travel routes or safety. It's like, how does he get there? How does he, get himself established?
Well, I guess he's immortal, so he's got all the time in the world.
I guess so. He must be very old at this point then. Also, he's got to be over 2,000 years old when we meet him.
He says in this scene, I think he says, I was born 2,437 years ago.
Okay, so he's pretty young when he does this then.
Right.
As someone who theoretically could still be in his mortal life, he manages to make it to a place that would be literally mythical by comparison. And then discovers an anachronistic sword somehow.
So he gets this sword,
Yep.
which is, I don't know, the sword, I guess because it's anachronistic, like, it's got this special quality to it, like a lightsaber or
Literally, it's a 2,000-year-old sword.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
but or like Lord of the Rings, like this is like the hero's special weapon.
Oh,
you know
like
what I mean?
Sting, the glowy orc sword.
From The Hobbit.
Oh, right, right. But yeah, a lot of kind of mythological stories have these kind of special, like the sword in the stone sort of weapon that allows the hero to complete his journey.
I just don't understand why.
Yeah.
This was a necessary ingredient of this whole thing. but-
I don't mind it. I think it's kind of fun.
Yeah, if you don't think about it, it's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's actually a big part of the story.
Yeah.
The sword is what blows up Connor's spot because the metallurgist character,
Right.
it's like their hint that something is afoot,
Something's wrong. Yeah.
but it has nothing to do really with immortals.
No, it's just an odd sword.
It's just an odd sword.
Yeah.
Like, it's not actually... We never established that Shikiku's, which was Ramirez's last wife, that, like, her father is, like, immortal or
Right.
magical in some way. He's just this dude who invents steel,
Right.
basically.
Well, and they chose the name for his father. I think her father. We talked about this on another episode. Masamune, who's like in Japan. I think he actually existed, but he's kind of reached mythical status.
Right.
And he's like a swordsmith or sword maker who made like the most famous swords.
Right.
But not in, like, 600 BC.
Yeah, that I'm sure is
I'm
probably
sure he was,
not
like,
the case.
Middle Ages Japan.
Yeah.
Like, I'm pretty sure these weapons were being used, like, then. When this scene is being shot in, like, 1500s, that's when people were using these things. Not
Yeah.
Right.
2,000 years before that.
So Ramirez warns Connor about falling in love because he's trying to protect him because the pain of loss is too much to
Right.
bear. So you gotta book it, Connor. Stitch to the ladies.
Connor is not about that.
Right.
So then they start talking about the Kurgan a little bit.
Yeah, they're back at the castle, hanging out on the fourth story of the castle.
Yeah.
Can we just pause for a second and point out? I mean, we're about to get into this pretty interesting action beat, but we're like 45 minutes into the movie.
Yeah.
We have only just learned about the gathering. We have only just learned about that losing your head is what causes you to die.
Right.
Like, all these rules that we take for granted, if you are familiar with the Highlander universe, come very late in the context of this movie.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Moving on.
they dole it out pretty slow.
Yeah. Well, I guess now we, the viewers, can be safe in knowing that Connor isn't just the crazy, like, axe murderer, decapitator guy.
Which up till now is a viable theory.
Right.
So she's just based on that movie poster.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
crazy. Ramirez gives Connor some info on the Kurgan. He says he's from the steppes of Russia.
Right.
From the Kurgan clan, I guess. And they would throw
Children into dog pits?
Yeah.
For meat? Okay.
So yeah, I guess their whole clan of people were pretty awful.
So it's also interesting that he's the Kurgan, just like he's the Highlander.
Right.
Right.
So, again, these titles, we've talked about this a bit in the context of the show, that people, as they're traveling through time, maybe develop reputations or titles that just kind of follow them. I think that's set up here, and it's kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It also makes a little bit more sense about, like, the immortal Rolodex that all these people seem to have. But
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and also Ramirez describes the Kurgan as the strongest of all the immortals, right?
Yeah. And the perfect warrior. He calls
Yeah.
him.
So that's interesting.
because he already knows this somehow.
Right.
Yeah. So they've at least faced each other before now.
And Connor asks, how can you defeat such a guy? And Ramirez says, with heart, faith, and steel. Which reminded me a lot of, what is it, Clear Eyes, Full Hearts, Can't Lose, or whatever, from Friday Night Lights. But Ramirez does mention faith, which I thought was another interesting thing. Again, these religious elements are sprinkled throughout this pretty liberally. Also, this is another one of those things that doesn't come back. Because, again, like this don't lose your head sort of element, like stay calm. It's like, well, how do you beat the Kurgan? With heart, faith, and steel. And it's like, okay, so then flash forward to the end of the movie. How does Connor beat him? Like, do we see that analogy? Like with heart, faith, and steel? Like, you know what I mean? Like, again, I don't feel like that little mantra is present at the end, like in some way. Like we don't, again, I don't know, we don't see any sort of manifestation of those things.
Yeah, not-
like Connor doesn't talk about,
Yeah.
you know.
Not really.
Yeah.
No.
Because I never feel like Connor has heart. Like, again, he seems like a guy that's just scraping by. Like,
Yeah.
he's barely survived through the years.
Right.
Like, a reluctant warrior sort of guy. So, yeah, I'm not sure exactly how this fits in. It's another one of those things that probably could have been written a little differently.
Sure. So then Ramirez and Heather are having like some one-on-one time. I don't know what Connor's doing.
I forget if they say anything. Do they ever say what? He's
They
just
don't.
off.
He's just not there.
Yeah. It's a
Maybe-
cool shot. And
Yeah.
like, to intro this scene, like the camera comes in like through the window and then comes all the way down the castle.
Yeah.
Like this is like a cool old, like, I don't know, it's in like Orson Welles' Citizen Kane sort of technique, like where they'll put a camera through the set, but the set comes apart. That way the whole camera can fit through. So it sneaks its way through the window, but then the set blows apart behind it, and then it can move around freely in the room, which is pretty cool. That's a nice little technique.
Yeah, and it like there's a really cool matte painting. We were talking about this before of their castle, and like a storm's a brewing. So there's some weird like thunder effects on the matte painting. I don't know how they did it, but there's like lightning like shown on it. It's really interesting.
That's cool.
Cool special effect here. But yeah, I really liked that. But they're just hanging out, having dinner, drinking some wine.
Getting schmammered.
Yep.
Yeah.
Ramirez is recounting his like past adventures, which I thought was good. He's being charming as usual.
And enter the Kurgan.
Yep. So I guess he kind of gets the buzz, and somebody on like Facebook or SoundCloud or Twitter mentioned this to us, that the original cut of the movie did not have a buzz sound at all. That the camera would just zoom in, and the director's cut, they added that sound effect to make it congruous with the TV show. So that was interesting. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's true or not. That makes sense though.
Yeah.
Interesting. So he gets the buzz, and then the Kurgan busts through the door.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of awesome. Also, this is the first time we really get a good look at him, not in his skull helm.
Yeah.
And he kind of still looks like a punk rock guy in the past.
Yeah.
Yeah. He has like weird like fur fringes or something, and it's like a sleeveless armor.
Right. Yeah,
He,
because you don't have to protect your arms for some reason.
Nope. Well, but he bursts through and like leaps into the room and chops a table in half.
Right.
Bust up in the house.
So this was Clancy Brown's first day of filming, apparently.
Oh, I think I read this.
And he was super nervous about doing this scene. So he busts in, and instead of chopping the table in half, like he swung the sword the other way and like hit the chandelier. He almost hit Connery in the face. Apparently Connery like stormed off the set. He was so pissed because he almost got hurt. Clancy Brown apparently felt very bad and like apologized profusely. He was like, I was super nervous, and they got on with the shoot. But interesting tidbit.
Kurgan hates that table.
Yeah. He's probably just angry he wasn't invited to dinner, honestly. This scene's awesome. Like,
It's good.
They start fighting. Connery gets an awesome slash on the Kurgan's neck.
Like, beat
Right
one
away.
of this fight. Like, he cuts
Yeah.
the table in half, and then just gets nailed.
Yeah.
Right.
And
And
it's,
Heather's in the corner, like, screaming.
Yeah.
And the camera's, like, kind of flying all over the place. This reminded me very much of, like, Sam Raimi, like, the shooting style. Like,
Yeah.
The camera was, like, I don't know, there's a lot of, like, low camera stuff, like, riding along the floor, zooming up to people. Yeah, it felt like The Evil Dead or something.
and then Connery's like, oh, my cut has improved your voice, which I thought was pretty funny.
Yeah.
Two things about this segment. So, one, we often kind of wonder what the immortality power rules are in terms of healing. So, this introduces two items that we see very clearly in this fight. One, they're way more like superheroes in this than they are in the show. Like, the healing in the show seems to be relatively slow. It's not instantaneous, certainly.
And you
Here-
can die in the show. Like, people die and are reborn, essentially. They can be out of commission for a little bit.
Right. Whereas in this, it seems like anything that doesn't remove your head, you almost instantly recover from. Because despite having his throat brutally cut and like later being stabbed through the stomach, the Kurgan is A-okay. Like,
Yeah.
he is fine. At one point, he takes like a multi-story fall and just gets back up.
Right.
Instantly.
Yeah.
So that's one side of this thing. The other side, though, is he is left with this massive scar across his throat that evidently permanently affects his voice.
Yeah.
So, what other wounds does he carry? Like, how else do persistent injuries go on? Like, when Ramirez stabs him through the stomach, does he just permanently have like a giant scar there, or like? Are his intestines permanently ruptured? Like, what are the results
Right.
of this kind of injury?
In the script, Connor's nude body, because later he takes his shirt off, is supposed to be riddled with scars, and it's not in the movie.
Interesting.
So, who knows?
Yeah, it's all a question mark. It's really
Yeah.
cool the way
It's
they
cool.
do it.
Yeah.
And again, I think this is one of those like style over substance things, like because the visual imagery you get later of the Kurgan with the scar on his neck and he puts safety pins in it. It's
Yeah.
like, and he has this crazy voice. It's like that to me, I think is worth a leap in any sort of logic in this. It's like whatever, like you
Yeah.
get that image, that's pretty awesome. Like, so I'm cool with forgiving it for whatever other problems
Sure.
this brings up.
Here's a question. Is his voice different in the beginning of the movie and later? Because I didn't notice a difference.
I couldn't really tell that much either. I also don't think you get to hear him talk enough to really notice a difference.
He says one line.
Yeah, because
or
Connor's
two.
like,
No,
oh,
he
it's
says a
improved your
few.
voice. And it's like, wait,
Yeah.
what did he say before? Like, because he comes out screaming anyway. He's like, I'm
Yeah.
here for you.
Well, before he said, we had a deal and there can be only one and another time. So he does have some dialogue. I didn't notice a difference, but...
I do think his voice is less gravelly before this sequence. But
Probably.
it's hard to tell.
Yeah. It's such like a powerful, deep voice in the first place. So.
Yeah.
Just in saying more about how kind of bizarre this structure is, they do fight their way up the stairs, revealing no other rooms. And this house is either these are like this is like the battle of the tough guys, or this castle is made of foil because they literally destroy this rock castle by hitting it with swords.
Well, I think it's supposed to be the whole magic thing we were talking about earlier, because there's also a storm happening when they're fighting, and they're like fighting up the steps and lightning striking the castle, and their swords, like you said, are like making rocks explode off the side and like lightly fall down the steps. Like you can tell they're styrofoam, but it's still pretty cool. And like they cut like big holes open in the castle, and you can see the storm outside. It's really dramatic and awesome.
I like the way this is staged also, because this is all on a set.
Right.
Unlike most of the other scenes in this movie. But like the set is kind of chintzy, but I think that's really great in this scene. Like this feels like this Germanic like opera. Like this is like we're watching like Wagner or something. And I think it's added to the fact because it's like it looks like a backdrop and it looks like a set. And then there's two people like swashbuckling up the stairs, and it's like, and the music is really like over the top. Like it sounds like something you'd see in like an old movie or something.
Yeah.
Or an opera. So yeah, I think that's a really fun setting for this fight.
So they go up and up and up to a stairway to heaven, a stairway that like doesn't lead anywhere.
Yeah.
And the Kurgan, well, Ramirez gets a stab in through the Kurgan's gut, but after that, the Kurgan kind of gets the upper hand.
He says some really creepy stuff. He's going to kill Ramirez. And he's like, oh, your woman, like, she'll be mine. It's like, gross, man. Like,
it's real
very
gross.
rapey.
Yeah.
Well, literally.
Yeah,
literally
it's rapey.
And Sean Connery spits in the Kurgan's face.
Yep. And then that's the end of Connor. He gets his head lopped off.
Yep.
But this quickening is different than the first quickening we've seen. Like, I noticed that, like, Connor and the Kurgan have different quickening styles, it would seem. Connor got, like, lifted off the ground, and he's yelling a lot, and there's all this lightning. Like, the Kurgan's is different. He, like, just closes his eyes and, like, shakes a bunch.
Well, does he get struck by lightning a bunch of times?
Oh, maybe he does get struck by
Yeah.
lightning here. But I still feel like they're different.
This looks more akin to what happens in the show, where you just kind of like stand there and are getting bombarded with electricity. And then for some reason, I guess played for laughs, then the stairwell falls out from under him and he just falls.
Yeah.
I don't know what that's about.
And I guess it's all for the shock at the end where his hand grabs Heather's neck and he's like, hello, pretty.
Yeah.
I guess, but we've already seen him take essentially an identical fall in this scene.
Yeah.
We know he's fine.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us on this week's Highlander Rewatched. Make sure you chime in next week to get more great Highlander tidbits and more hard-hitting analysis.
Hard-hitting indeed.
I'm one of your rewatchers, Kyle.
I'm Keith.
This is Eamon.
Bye-bye.
See you next time.
Bye.
Another time, Cloud.
Garfield, are you cruising for a piece of lasagna? I hate Mondays.